conversations. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm here with Jeff Roorda. He is running for Missouri Senate District 22. Thanks so much for being here today.
No, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hey, just as a reminder, my name is Pastor Daniel. I'm here on staff at New Hope Fellowship, and we are providing this as a service to the community. We're not sponsoring or endorsing any of the candidates. We're simply providing an avenue for the community to get to know who they are. So with that in mind, Jeff, will you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about who you are and your family, your background, stuff like that?
Yeah, I've lived out here since I was 12 years old, so 45 years I've lived in Jefferson County. Moved from South St. Louis when I was 12, and grew up out here, graduated from Windsor High School, in the Windsor High School Hall of Fame.
What sport?
None.
Oh.
When they inducted me, I said, well, obviously there's no academic or athletic requirements to get in the Hall of Fame. So my daughters, all three of my daughters, Macy, Lydia, and Sophie, went to Windsor. I wanted them to go to the same high school I did because I had such a great experience there, and they enjoyed it as well. My wife Nancy and I have been married for 28 years this month.
Congratulations.
And, thank you. You know, we love it here. We've made this our home, and we try to give back to the community as much as we can.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And tell us a little bit about your background. What have you been doing? That kind of thing.
So I started out when I was 15 years old. I was in my best friend's front yard, and his neighbor was a volunteer firefighter, and he was walking out to his car, and he yelled at us, and he said, "Hey, you kids are joining the Explorer Post as junior firefighters down in Antonia tonight." And we're like, okay. So I joined, really fell in love with public service, public safety. Was a junior firefighter for about 3 years and a volunteer firefighter in Antonia for about 10 years. And, you know, enjoyed very much, you know, caring for the community in that way. While I was still there, I enrolled in the police academy. I was working as a police dispatcher during the day, going to the police academy at night, and also serving as a volunteer firefighter.
Busy.
Yeah, busy. I was a busy kid, and got hired as a police officer after working 4 years as a dispatcher while I was doing all these other things, and worked as a cop for about I was about 17 years altogether, kind of the time I worked as a reserve officer at the beginning of my career. And then in 2004, I was a police chief and city administrator in Kimmswick, and I decided I wanted to do something different and ran for the State House of Representatives and won a very close election and served for 8 years until I was term limited. And since then, I've been the spokesman for the Fraternal Order of Police in St. Louis. Now, some of this overlaps. I know people think I'm 90 years old and just add up all these numbers.
Yeah, I'm adding the years.
Yeah, some of those add overlap.
Yes,
so. right. So, but a long career of service to our community, and very proud of that. I also served in elected positions on the Rock Township Ambulance District Board and Antonia Fire District's Board of Directors. So, always giving back.
That's awesome. It's awesome. Well, we have some questions prepared, and so we want to go ahead and get through some of those.
If I could mention one other thing.
Absolutely.
Since we're in a church setting, and I'm a parishioner at St. Paul's Church in Cronolette, where I was baptized and where I went to church with my family as a child, where my grandparents and aunts and uncles are interred. You know, so that's a special connection for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So tell us about a time that you faced an ethical dilemma and how you resolved it.
Well, I mean, you know, in the legislature, you faced an ethical dilemma every time you had to vote. You know, these bills, you know, there's no such thing as a small bill. You know, once a bill's moving, people start piling amendments on it, and you know, it's always sort of the prisoner's dilemma. You know, it's like there's some really good stuff in here, and there's some stuff that I don't like so much. And you know, if the bad stuff was so bad that it just didn't pass the sniff test, you'd vote no, aside from the good stuff in there. You know, and then those things come back to haunt you in political season. You know, I got opponents slinging mud. You know, I've run a very clean campaign, but my opponents are slinging mud over some votes I cast, and not telling the whole story. That, you know, there were some really good things in those bills, and you know, that's just sort of a dilemma you have to get used to as a lawmaker.
Sure. It seems like people are more interested in politics than any other time in my lifetime. I don't know if you would say the
No, I
same.
would agree with that, yeah.
And why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, there's so much information to access. If when I was a kid, if I wanted to know about politics, I have to go to the library or go to the newsstand and buy a newspaper that had information on it that was at least 24 hours old by then. I
Right.
mean, in our society, we are inundated with constant, instant information, and we have to sort through it like no other generation before us has. And the danger in that is that I think there are people who have a information bias and only look for information that confirms what they believe. It's really hard to sort things out and to know what is going on. But I mean, that is the job of a lawmaker, and you have to be a big consumer of news and know what the trusted sources are.
Sure. And I think with the interest in politics, there's also a desire for more transparency from our politicians.
Right.
And so what have you done over your time, and then what will you continue to do if you were to be elected senator, to increase that transparency?
Well, first of all, when I was a state representative for those 8 years, I was known as a guy who was really active with constituency work. We all had staff. Everybody in the House got a legislative assistant assigned to them, and I had some really great ones that were wonderful staffers. But I insisted that every single email I answered personally. I insisted every single phone call I answered personally. And I said, hey, if I've got a resident or a school group from back home, I want to see them. I bring them up to the House floor, pull me off. I don't care if I miss a couple of votes. If I got a constituent there, I want to be able to talk to them and hear what's important to them. And that's how you keep people informed. We send out a newsletter every couple of weeks when we're in session, and then less frequently when we're out of session, trying to keep our constituents aware of what was happening in the Capitol.
Sure. What or who would you say are the major influences in your life?
Well, my mom and dad. Unfortunately, I lost Mom about 5 years ago. She was just a wonderful woman, I always said that she got me more votes than I got myself, because she was the head teller at the local bank, and everybody knew her, and she was so beautiful. People would say, "Is that your sister that works at the bank?" And I'd say, "No, it's my mom." It made me feel really old. But she until she got sick, she always looked very young, and that's who I was most influenced by. My grandparents on my mom's side, I was very, very close to them. Would spend every possible moment with them. But in my life, I've worked around police and firefighters, for my entire adult life, and I got to tell you, these are really good people who've, if you want to have people who influence your life in a positive way, people who sacrifice and serve in as a first responder are wonderful people. Aside from the horrible rap they get from folks who have a hidden agenda in the last few years.
Yeah. What would you say, and I know you're at the state level, but you're fighting for people who are here, right? And I mean, or representing, maybe is a better term.
Sure.
What would you say is the biggest problem facing Jefferson County?
I'd say, I'm biased, because I'm the first responder guy, but I'd say safety. We've got, and I'm not just talking about how crime is starting to ooze out into the suburbs from St. Louis, which has become just the wild, wild west and completely out of control, just throwing the doors of prisons open and letting some of the most ruthless criminals we've ever seen free. But also our highways out here are just, we've never really gotten our fair share of highway dollars, and I will fight harder than any senator we've ever seen to try to get us more highway dollars so we can have safer highways. I mean, it's just really heart-wrenching to see these stories in the paper almost on a weekly basis of some young person that's lost their life on our dangerous highways. So that's another component of the safety thing. And then, this opioid epidemic is just really taken a lot of lives. I worked so closely with those parents when I was a state rep. We actually worked in a very bipartisan way with State Rep Steve Lynch, who was from the Lebanon, Missouri area, and I worked really hard to get this Narcan bill passed in my last year in the legislature, which allowed police and firefighters who previously weren't qualified to distribute Narcan, which will bring somebody back from an opioid overdose like that and save their life. We got that into police cars and fire trucks. Governor Nixon came here to High Ridge to sign the bill. He actually signed it at the High Ridge Firehouse because I'd leaned on him heavily to do so. And, it has saved hundreds of young kids' lives. And these aren't necessarily junkies or drug addicts. These are kids that very often die the first time they experiment with these drugs. Fentanyl and heroin are such dosage varying drugs that they just are so deadly and dangerous that that's something we really have to get our hands around.
Absolutely. And I know you've already alluded to this, but why specifically are you running for this position?
Well, I don't mean to take a shot at my opponents, but I looked at the other three folks running, and I thought that I didn't think any of them were up to the task. I thought that we needed somebody that was willing to fight for our county, and my opponents are against a lot of things, but I'm for things. I want to get things done, and I think that's what we need.
Okay. All right. Well, good deal. I want to. We covered a lot of the questions I wanted to get to, but I want to make sure we get to the lightning round.
Yeah.
And which these are, for some candidates, the fun questions, for others, the not so fun questions. And so, let's see. When you were 6 years old, so this was before you became a volunteer firefighter, and what did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't know. A baseball player, probably.
Baseball player. You're a Cardinals fan?
Oh, such a big Cardinals fan.
Okay.
My grandpa would sit in his chair and listen to the Cardinals on a transistor radio, and I would sit on the floor next to him. And I mean, when I was a child, I rarely missed a Cardinals game. We just would, gather around the radio or the very few televised shows games when I was young.
Yeah. And how did you feel about Albert coming back?
Oh, I was so excited.
Yeah.
Some people were mad about that, and I was so excited to see it happen. It's just, it's a fairy tale.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm a huge Waino fan, and so I didn't want him to get pushed into the shadows because of Albert and Yachty. I don't think so either, but it's fun to see them all kind of have their swan song together. It'd be cool if they could bring a World Series back. All right. Let's see. If you were having me over for dinner, okay, not inviting myself,
right?
But if you were having me over for dinner, what meal would you make to impress me?
Well, I wouldn't make any meal. I married a wonderful cook, and my wife loves the kitchen, and she comes from a big German family, and but I mean, anything she makes, she just made spaghetti the other night. It was fantastic. It's great to go home to a wife that's such a great cook and such a great mother.
Yeah, that's awesome. What is your favorite movie?
I'd have to say The Departed. I worked undercover for 5 years out here in Jefferson County. I was on the Jefferson County Drug Task Force and then on a federal task force. Did over 100 undercover buys. So, as you know, that's an intense movie. And, when the surprise ending happens, I was so related to Leonardo DiCaprio's character, him being so deep undercover, and I had nightmares about that movie and said I'll never see that movie again. And once I kind of appreciated how good it was, I've seen it probably 30 times.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Jeff, it's been great having you on today. Where can people go to find more information about you?
The website is www.roordaforsenate.com. I've got a Roorda for Senate Facebook page, and then my own personal Facebook page, which has about 5,000 followers. They can just Google me. I've been fighting for cops and on national TV, well over 100 times, written a book about the big Ferguson lie called The War on Police. So I'm an open book, literally.
Okay. Well, like I said, it's been